Go ahead and call to order the County Operations Committee meeting for July 28th, 2026. Our first order of action is to have Betty Duncan join us remotely. So I need a motion, Ms. Daly and Member Blair. So I'll put this up. All in favor, I guess we have it on the screen, right? Okay, so go ahead and vote, please. Sorry. Waking you up. Keeping Member Duncan awake, or Daly awake. Member Duncan, you now are voted in to join us remotely. So thank you for joining. Okay, we will now move to approval of minutes for June 23rd, 2026. So I need a motion on the floor. Member Coates and Member Renault is a second. Any corrections, changes, amendments to the minutes? They were long this time, but I think very detailed, so well done. Any otherwise, I'll ask for a vote.
Mine is an I, Steve. My
Okay, thank you.
My app is not coming up.
Okay, thank you, Member Duncan. As an I.
Yes.
All right, that passes. Thank you. The next are two informational items. The first one is the workers' compensation and liability reports. And we'll ask Ms. Loftus to go through and present that to us.
Okay, good afternoon. In front of you is our Q2 work comp and liability report. This is the very similar report that you see each quarter. The two charts on the top are our liability claims related to each by year, and then of course the costs. And then the bottom two charts reflect our workers' compensation, again, claims and costs that have been paid year to date. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Loftus on these two reports? All right, we will move to the next report. I know you've had them both, sorry, they're both into one. So next will be, apologize, I need to move back up to my agenda. The strategic plan update for second quarter of 2026. And we have Ms. Woods presenting that. Welcome, and it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. In front of you, you have your Q2 update for the 2026 strategic plan action items. There's several reporting up to the operations committee. I may not be a subject matter expert, but I'm happy to either try to answer your questions or maybe get some help from other members in the room.
Excuse me, under the operations committee, we have, I think, a few items. So we have succession planning strategy, which is item 4. We have professional development strategy, item 14. We have workplace culture and branding, which is 20. And we have comprehensive update on personnel policies, 30. And develop artificial intelligence policy, 33. So those are the ones that we have for this committee. I know other committees will have their own respective. So I'll ask if anybody on the committee wants to speak to these or have Ms. Wood speak to one. So Member Williams.
Thank you. Under succession planning, I'm just wondering if, elected officials is a lot different than the appointed, right? Do the elected officials have a playbook of such or information on the duties that they have within their office?
Good
I mean,
question.
and the reason why I'm asking is because elected could be anybody. It's an elected position. So you don't really know who that person is going to be until after the election.
Yeah, I think it's a valid question of, for planning, transition planning for electeds, do the current electeds have some sort of a playbook of what that office does? Not sure that fits directly under the succession planning, but it may fit. I would ask either Administrator Sorrell or Ms. Woods to comment.
I think the detail of that playbook varies and sometimes varies wildly by elected office. So some of our elected officials have pretty detailed playbooks, or some type of documentation that ties back to statutes in which they derive their authority and their power, and some maybe do not. I'll just use as an example the treasurer's office. Brandon had received some documentation, but has had to either recreate or modify a lot of the documentation that he inherited for how to run that office. And that even included, working side by side with his predecessor for upwards of a month or more before he was actually appointed and took office.
Yeah, I think it's a valid question. Not sure how to put a standards or policy around that. But any additional, Member Williams, before I go to other members? Okay, Member Daley?
Well, I agree with Member Williams, but I would take it a step further. It's one thing to do succession planning for people who are part of the organization and are appointed. I don't think the county board has any business doing succession planning for elected officials. I think that borders on an ethics question of whether you're mixing public service with politics, which I don't think we want to be doing.
I think that's a valid statement. On that topic, any of the other committee members want to opine on it? Member Blair.
Mine's a little less on succession planning in that kind of sense, but more, and this might be a question for Mark, is how do we have a knowledge base for any of our employees? If they were to get hit by a bus tomorrow, what is the policy in terms of how we document our processes and stuff for the next person, elected or no?
We like to use win the lottery versus hit by a bus.
Move on to greener pastures.
But I think even in the appointed office, whether they're coming up through the administrator's office or the quasi-independent agencies, there's still going to be some variation in terms of what those policies and procedures are. I know many of the offices that report up to me have a pretty good set of policies and procedures. And I'm going to make a presumption that the public health administrator, based on the direction from the Board of Health, has the same, probably even more robust. But again, those quasi-independent boards, agencies, those executive directors or those folks report up to those boards and not to this board or to me, much like the elected officials. So, but I would say that the folks that report up to the county administrator's office have a pretty good set of internal policies and procedures for how their office is run. Pretty much everyone has got a good number two that can, in the interim, step up and make sure that the business of that portion of county government continues.
It's good unless the number 2 was on the same lottery ticket as number 1. But
Fair point.
I guess I'd like to maybe entertain Member Daly's comment. Would we be, for discussion, willing to take the electeds out of the scope for the reasons that we have discussed? Because again, the administration, Ms. Woods, really don't have any directive over the electeds, and I think for the discussion points, so would anyone have any opposition to removing the electeds from the scope? Okay, seeing no opposition, I turn that back to Ms. Woods for future updates.
Mr. Chairman, I would maybe say one caveat. I could not agree more with what Ms. Daly said about the elected office holder themselves. But sometimes in the past, an elected official has come to us and asked for assistance with succession planning for maybe a middle manager or their chief deputy. And grant, the chief deputy serves at the pleasure of the elected office holder. But I think there are things that, upon request, administration, HR can provide services to assistance to that elected office holder. Again, provided we're not talking about the elected office itself.
Yeah, I guess for clarification, I agree. It'd be the elected office holder position that I would ask to exclude. Any employee under the elected office holder could be put into it. So we can reword this structurally. That way the elected officials have a resource to come back to. Okay, thank you for the clarification. Anything under succession planning beyond this? Okay. Any questions about any of the other items under this operations strategy? Member Phelan.
I know Ms. Wood says that she was not the subject matter expert on this, but do we have one in the room that would just provide us an update rather than us asking questions about it?
An update of each of these items?
Yeah. Under Operations Committee.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Ms. Woods, are you comfortable at least kind of going through it in a high level without reading us the document?
Sure.
All right, thank you.
The professional development strategy, item 14, that actually has no updates from last quarter. Deputy Musselman is working through that. On 20, workplace culture and branding, we do have, we also had no update on that item as well. And for the folks that are here with me in the room, if I'm speaking incorrectly, feel free to jump up. We are working on item 30, comprehensive update of personnel policies. Director Loftus is here if you have any questions on that. And that continues to just be a continual working group progressing those items. And then lastly, you'll have a big update here with Director Little on item 33, develop AI policy. That's been plugging away. I think the last 3 meetings, or maybe today is the 3rd meeting to hopefully adopt a policy. So maybe there'll be a big check marking on that one for next quarter's update.
Okay. Member Phelan?
Yeah, just a couple follow-up questions. When you say that there's no update, or does that mean no work has been done on it across the last quarter? Or does that just mean that we haven't hit another milestone worth tracking? What exactly does that mean? And then my other question is, who is responsible for updating these on our website, and how frequently does that happen?
Yeah, thank you for those questions. It could mean multiple things. Sometimes work has stalled. Sometimes we're waiting for a milestone that had to be scheduled outside of the quarter. So it's just hasn't progressed because of whatever the timeline prescribes. So it could be a variety of things. I am the organizer and chief cheerleader of the strategic plan. So what I generally do is about a month before the committee create the template and ask the project leads for an update and usher that through till it's submitted here.
I guess you had the question on, is it put out on published website?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot that part. These quarterly updates are not provided on the website. We have the strategic plan, we have the 2026 action agenda, but we do not post these quarterly updates. We certainly could. Alternatively, we have percentages complete of each project, and those are updated every quarter. So I worked with IT to update the website on the percentages complete for each of these projects, and that's already been done for this quarter.
That's exactly what I was asking about. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Woods.
Thank you.
Now we will move on to resolutions. We have two resolutions today. We have the approval of the third-party administrator bids for risk management services. And Ms. Loftus gets to present that to us. Oh, sorry. We need a motion to put that on the floor. Member Williams and Member Elsasser is the second. Now it's your turn, Ms. Loftus.
Okay, thank you. So, if you recall, we are self-insured for our workers' comp and liability services. And so we have a third-party administrator, a TPA, that handles all of our claims. So they're the ones that are processing the claims, paying the claims, coordinating with the claimants, with legal counsel, with insurance carriers, etc. So every 5 years, according to our purchasing policy, we do go out for bid for these services. So that's what we've done. We went out in April, issued a RFP, and received 4 proposals back. The individuals that responded is included in the bid report in your packet. We evaluated those along with our broker, looking at various things such as claim management procedures and handling, looking at their data management, their reporting services, as well as cost and disruption of services. So we did conduct interviews, and after evaluating all of our various criteria, we are recommending to stay with Gallagher Bassett, who is the incumbent, for our TPA services, and to enter into a 5-year contract. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from committee members? Okay, I think it's pretty straightforward. I'll ask, do you have a question, Member Blair? Okay, I will ask for a vote.
Aye.
All right, Member Duncan is an aye. You have voice vote? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. The second resolution is the adoption of enterprise artificial intelligence usage policy and governance framework. So I need a motion to put that on the floor. Member Coates and Member Blair. So I will turn this over to CIO Little and let him lead with this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we're following up on our discussion we had in June when we brought the policy forward. Since that time, we've had a lot of collaboration between county administration, the state's attorney's office, and IT to update the policy based upon the feedback we received from the committee members, the chair, and information we reached out to the elected and management team from. I'll kind of go through those areas that we enhanced. Number one, there was clear direction that the committee wanted more detailed on the governance structure. So if you go through the policy, that governance structure is now a 7-member AI governance committee. It has a balanced stakeholder representation. The committee brings together both technical, legal, administrative, elected, and operational and user perspectives to the committee, including a county board member, county administration, the CIO, the chief assistant, state's attorney, an elected official, and 2 end users, one from the tier 1 is defined in tier 2. The other thing it brings forward is a distinct timeline, a formal request procedure for tier 2 and 3 access must be established within 90 days of the formation of that, and a comprehensive NIST compliance plan within 6 months. The other thing that came forward was to look at national standards for rolling out that plan. We looked at a couple of those and moved forward with the recommendation of the NIST standard. Basically a framework. There's no stamp on that, whether you've done it or you haven't done it. It's a framework moving forward. The new AI framework from NIST is fairly new. It's in version 1. Here's the current version 1 of it. It's about a 50-page document that outlines that. They also come with a playbook on how to implement it. That's another 150 pages. So lots of information in there. I think it's a good recommendation because we follow the NIST standard when it comes from the cybersecurity side. We've always worked towards that. Will we be 100% with it? That's hard to say, but at least give us a framework that we can follow and keep moving forward with. The other question that came up in the last meeting had to do with kind of a financial roadmap cost. Those weren't clearly outlined in there from a generative AI software side of things. After further investigation and looking at the June data of usage across the organization, I broke it down into, we have basically about 300 what I would call super users using the system on a regular basis, on a daily basis. It fluctuates. I will say overall usage, not by users, but just usage of the type of software was up about 11% from May to June. If you look at also the data from the types of AI software that's being used, out of those about 300 users, the number of unique users using OpenAI ChatGPT is number 1. There's about 213, 214 of those that are using that on a regular basis. Google Gemini, 121. Beyond Words, 38. And then we break it down to some of the others. There's a few Claude users at 15 on a regular basis. So when you look at those and you look at moving forward on what potentially the governance structure may look at, there's not a single AI LLM that has a solution to the needs of every department, every organization. But I think you can really nail that down to maybe 4 that would work across our organization. I think that's something we've got to get feedback on as part of this governance structure from the end users, from maybe a survey type. But if you look at the average cost of enterprise versions of those across the board for those 4 that I looked at, it's about it averages $44, a little over $44 a user per month. Now, some of those have flat rates that it's $30. A couple of those you get a basic of $20, $25. If you go over the amount, there's an additional cost on top of that. But having that software within an enterprise agreement allows us to control that and doesn't allow a user just to keep clicking the button and adding more tokens. So that $44 with about 300 users is about $160,000 a year around. We actually budgeted for that in the 2027 budget. Now, could there be users out there that are not using it today that may want to use it? That's a possibility. We don't have that data in front of us. We don't have it at the moment. So from that perspective on numbers, we came back with those specifically. There's also some technical guardrails and statutory protection. The statutory protections were all put in by the state's attorney, and they worked through those on how we protect ourselves to make sure we're meeting that specifically. So I think that's kind of a summary of overall what's been added to the document. I think it's a lot more detailed. We get a lot of feedback. Spent a lot of time trying to get it to the point it is today. Is it perfect? No. I don't think it'll ever be perfect. You know, as I spoke 3 months ago, we talked about this evolving on a monthly, 3-month basis. It's evolving on a weekly basis today. You're seeing changes within operations within some of the software. You're seeing subscription changes. It's moving quickly. But I think at least it's something we need to move forward with. There's, as Scott has investigated and we've talked about, there's very few counties across the country, very few counties across the state. I think Scott has found 6 in Illinois, is when he went out and looked that have actually been able to pass a policy. And I know several of my peers have been working with their boards on this for over a year to get the policy done. But I think it's a good start. We'll evolve, yes. I think there'll be other versions of this come as we move forward and as we really learn more about our user base and how they want to use it and how the licensing works forward.
Okay, thank you for the update. I'm going to pass it back out to committee members for questions. So start with Member Blair.
Just 2 questions or comments. One is to our chair. The policy says that this committee can request updates. We had talked about more frequent updates than annual. I'm going to make a recommendation for like maybe a 3-month update to see how this policy is rolled out at least, and then maybe every 3 months or 6 months let's after that.
Okay.
So if that's comfortable. And then my only other question, thanks for listening to our feedback. You have 90 days to create a procedure so that end users can request Tier 2 or Tier 3 access. That's not unreasonable. I'm just thinking about the people who already need that or are already using that. How are we grandfathering them in? How's that working?
I believe the policy states that we won't take anything away from anybody until we get to that point. The security tools that I talked a month ago about security tools. We went ahead with that. We'll begin to implement that security tool August 1st. That's when the licensing kicks in. That will set in the background, take a look at what type of data is being put in quietly. And then if it finds a social security number, a driver's license number, anything, it'll block it from that point. So that gives us, I think, that level of protection. It's going to take us a bit to get that put in, but that licensing kicks in August 1, and then we'll work with our vendor on getting that implemented. And that gives us some protection on that side to make sure there's not critical confidential pass through until we get that other process.
No, it's a very good question and good. I think the thoughtful response of allowing users to continue, but having the security system in the background to avoid risk is good. And so I think the understanding here is once the 90-day window, the governance committee develops the rest of the details, then those details will define the implementation for approvals and challenges or anything else that we need to run the business side of it. Other questions? Member Daly, did you?
Is there a structured plan here to take input from employees who are using this to see what their comments are about the way this rolls out?
I think the policy itself does not specifically articulate that, but that is without question the intent. We've already received some feedback from the leadership team, both appointed and elected, and I've committed to that group that there will be an amendment that'll have to be prepared. We're going to try and do that in the first 6 months. The chair cautioned me to actually put a date on that, but that's the goal right now. And I think as we continue to evolve in our usage as an organization, we're absolutely going to have to seek out feedback from end users at all 3 levels.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Member Daly, any additional follow-up? Okay. Member Phelan.
Not a question, but a comment specifically related to the governance structure. My only ask or request to anyone that will be participating in that structure is that we are mindful that although it won't cost additional dollars for payroll expenses for those employees to meet, it will be pulling them away from their primary role. So I would ask that they meet as infrequently as possible, or try and stack multiple requests under one meeting, or just are cognizant of there is a cost associated with that. And when we're talking about $44 licenses and we've got 7 people meeting that cost us more than $50 an hour, I don't want to end up upside down in that situation.
Okay. No, I think it's a very valid comment, and we have reviewed that. I'll just, from my role, make the comment that, during the first probably 90 days, there'll be some heavy lifting by the committee to do the work to put the structure in place. But I think the intention is, once the structure is in place from the governance committee, enrollment addition or removal of employees from AI subscriptions should be a process in the background that IT would process and approve. They may, as Member Blair asked for, updated reports. Maybe in the updated reports we could provide, in the last quarter, we've had X number of enrollments and X number have been removed, either to job changes or departure from the county. So we have some feedback, but I agree. I do not want the governance committee as one member. I don't want that committee to have to approve everyone. Any other questions, Member Phelan? Going around the horseshoe, other Member Elsasser.
Well, I'm not a big fan of AI in general from a spiritual standpoint, but I was going to vote against this because I think we are going to lose employees. I mean, if this is as efficient and as amazing as everybody says it is, 5 years from now, we should be able to, through attrition, once they retire, not have to hire new people back, which is actually a good thing for us, I believe. But I mean, if I was told about a person at the health department that has to go through many different line items, but now it's all going to be done in 5 minutes. So I mean, that's pretty amazing. But initially, I was going to vote against it because I didn't want to lose employees. But I guess that's a good thing if we can cut back, and it's going to cost us $160,000, and if we save employees down the road.
Okay.
And I know some of the elected officials said, no, we'll never have to cut back on employees, but and maybe they won't have to, but I think there's going to be a lot of work done for them through this.
Okay, very valid comments. And I think they've been discussed probably last month's meeting some, or the month before, but I would ask CIO, do you have any additional comments around the employee adjustments that would tie to this in the future? And I know you can't predict the future, but from talking to others, any general thoughts?
There's been lots of discussions among my peers across the country. I was just in NACO a couple of weeks ago, and this was a very hot topic in discussions on how different counties are adopting it. I think on this side of it, it's more about more efficiency use of your time and not the actual, as a tool, using it as a tool to make things quicker, to put out a better product. I think when you dig more into the process side of things, as we process data through, which we do a lot in this county, there's a lot of things that come in, those things are processed through, and there's a specific process that uses a software that there's a lot of human interaction in. I think that's where the opportunity comes in down the road.
Okay. Administrator Sorrell, any comments from your perspective?
I would echo largely what Mr. Little just shared. I think some of the things that I've read, and this is maybe a gross generalization, but organizations, including this organization, had a similar conversation when personal computers started to replace typewriters, and what we found was we generated more data and we used that personal computer to do many different things, and found, more ways to deliver services to our residents, to our taxpayers, to our constituents. And on some level, this is a similar generational transformation that we're working through.
Thank you. One more round for committee members. Any questions, comments regarding this topic? Okay, I'll just make a few comments to be brief. I like the process. I know this was complicated. We started 2 months ago with a informational discussion, which is one of my hot buttons to make sure that we have a good time to digest, think it through, make sure we make good decisions. It came to us last month. We still had some concerns and agreed to delay it 1 month. I think you've seen a lot of improvements. As CIO Little has commented, there will always be changes. It could be daily, weekly. I believe we can go forward with this policy as positioned. I also want to thank administration, CIO Little, State's Attorney Jenny has been involved quietly in the background, but she's making sure that we're meeting all of the compliance. I'd also like to thank, I know I reached out to several elected officials, several department heads to get some feedback. I know administration and CIO Little have reached out to them. So I appreciate the time given to us by those elected officials and department heads to provide the first round of feedback, because this is really important to get off on the right track. So with that, I will ask for a vote.
Aye.
All right. Member Duncan has given a voice vote of aye. No, member Elsasser? Okay, he's given an aye vote. So we'll enter that into the system on his behalf. All right, passes unanimously. Thank you, committee. The next item is a committee action item. That's review of executive session minutes. I will ask to put it on the floor, and then we'll turn it over to the state's attorney's office to give us the details. So I need a motion. Member Coates and Member Bryant as a second. So I'll turn it over to Jenny to give us the details.
Yes, it remains the recommendation of the state's attorney's office that all previously held minutes continue to be held because the need for confidentiality still exists, and to destroy executive session audio recordings that are more than 2 years old, except for those that relate to pending litigation.
She has it memorized, but I think she's got a cheat sheet also. I think most of us are almost ready to memorize that one. Okay, I'll ask for a vote.
Aye.
Member Duncan's an aye. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move to the next agenda item is discussion amongst the committee. Any discussion items we want to bring forward for future meetings, topics? All right, seeing none, we'll close that. We'll move to public comment. So the floor is now open for public comment. Anyone has comment from the public? All right, seeing none, we will close that. Miscellaneous from the committee? Seeing none, oh, sorry, Member Elsesser.
It doesn't affect this committee, but I think under the travel policies, is Heather still with us or did she retire?
Heather moved to a
McCourt?
Yeah, she resigned. And
Because they
went off
have
to-
her as the team leader. I don't know if you're going to have somebody else take over for her or what.
And that's under the strategy.
That's under travel policy.
Yeah, I'm sure administration will adjust that
Okay.
accordingly. I
That's fine.
don't want
Yeah,
administration.
and correct. I mean, we're in implementation mode now. The board has adopted the travel policy, but we'll obviously make that notation for Q3.
Okay. No.
I
good.
wanted to ask Scott, how many employees do we have right now? In our,
On our payroll today, I don't know off the top of my head. We have to
650 or something like that?
run a report. In terms of budgeted positions, it's right around 660.
That's what I thought.
But we on average we run roughly 7 or 8% of those positions are vacant across the entire organization.
Yeah. And how many did we have when you and I started many, many years ago during the dark ages?
Well over 1,000 because we had a nursing home.
So that's kind of my point. I think the typewriter converted to the computer, but you can see we have a third fewer employees now than we did when Scott and I started back during the dark ages. So
I'll let Scott comment on his dark age experience, but I mean the nursing home was a big adjustment in payroll count as we exited, and there's been efficiency adjustments through the time. Any other miscellaneous? Seeing none, we'll adjourn. Thank you.